Welcome to Tampa's Table, a culinary journey. I'm Jeff Hauk. I'm Vice President of Marketing for the 1905 family of restaurants. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about bread and Tampa history. Joining me today is Copeland Moré, owner, operator of La Segunda Central Bakery, Cafe, and world domination, really. But I'm thrilled to have him here today because Tampa Cuban bread made by La Segunda is the finest bread in the world, and you can put me down on record of that. Welcome.
Good morning. Thanks for having
That's
me,
not a
Jeff.
bad start, huh?
No, it was great. Yeah.
We're going to start light. What's your favorite Tampa flavor?
Favorite Tampa flavor? I would just say, rice and beans and pork. That's it. Just nice and easy.
The triple crown of flavor.
That's it. Yeah.
How often do you get to enjoy that?
I would say a few times a month.
Yeah.
I mean, just from different places. I don't have like a favorite spot really per se for that, but that just brings me back to my childhood, I think. 'Cause it's just a simple meal and side of Cuban bread, obviously. Yeah.
Yeah, I think about the generations who were raised on the three of those.
Yeah.
And it's one of the things I think that makes Tampa great is that just unholy trinity, and then you feel like you need a nap. It's like it's like eating a comforter,
Yeah.
Should come with a sleep number.
No, it is a very soothing meal,
Right. So you're the fourth generation of La Segunda. I know from working with the 1905 family restaurants and the Godsmart family, they're now in their fifth generation, going on sixth. They had just had one of their sixth generation working as a host at Eulalie.
It's awesome.
Tell me about the importance to you of keeping that tradition going, because there's like less than 3% get past third generation in a family business. Tell me how you handle that pressure, but also why it's so important to you.
Yeah, and I think the important thing, like you mentioned, is the third generation is where most of these types of businesses fail. So it's a lot of credit to my dad and his cousin Raymond for keeping the business rolling. I know there was a lot of challenges like in the 70s economically, throughout the country. And, they had to keep things moving. I know a lot of stories I can remember from them where they were, baking bread. They weren't just running the business. They were in on the oven. My dad was an ovenman, Raymond mixed. And, it's like, sweat and tears to get through sometimes when you have to do that, and so for me, obviously, it's extremely important. There is pressure I do feel, from our family and even the community at times. But
you're an emblem. It's not just a business. It's almost like a public trust. I know Columbia feels very much that way.
Yeah.
The history of La Segunda and Columbia is the history of Tampa, highs and lows.
Yeah.
Somebody snarky online said, "Well, La Segunda, what happened to the first one?" And I go, "Burned down."
Yeah.
It's got a longer history than you can understand. It's not a gimmick, okay? There was La Primera, right?
Yeah.
And La Segunda.
Right.
And La Tercera.
Tercera, yeah.
And it's just, of course it would be named that because that was Tampa. That was Ybor City, that mix of Spanish and Cuban and Italian and all those people working together and living together. And those are the flavors that you have. I mean, you have all different kind of flavors from all those different cultures in your place.
Yeah. A lot of people, it's a different topic, but a lot of people confuse us as a Cuban bakery.
Right.
But we like to tell that, no, we're an Ybor City bakery.
Yeah.
And Ybor City, has Italian flavors, has Spanish flavors, even has a hint of German. We have German chocolate cake, Cuban food also, obviously. But when people from Miami come to town, that's like our number one complaint online on Yelp.
Hard to believe somebody from Miami would complain, but go ahead.
But no, I actually understand it because it's a cultural thing.
Right.
So if you grew up and you feel like Cuban bread is a certain way, but you come here and people talk about La Segunda and it's, there's a lot of, hype or whatever. And then they come and say, well, this isn't Cuban bread or this isn't, or why do you have a cannoli in a Cuban bakery? And we try to explain to them and some people understand, but most don't.
Right. If you could explain, I'd love to do it, but I would sound angry if I did it. The difference between Miami Cuban bread and Tampa Cuban bread, because it's vast. A lot of people want to argue about whether salami should be there or not on the Cuban sandwich. I think the bread is the differentiator. What's the difference?
Yeah, I would agree with you too. The main difference with Miami Cuban bread, I haven't eaten a lot of it because I don't prefer it. I
Sure,
prefer our bread,
sure.
but it's a soft crust, more of what I would consider a hoagie bread. Whereas Cuban bread has the crunchy texture on the outside. When we're done proofing, we put it in front of the fans to get it a little bit of a crust. And then we use a palmetto leaf, which doesn't really change the flavor or anything, but it does change the texture and the way the bread um, scores on the top. And so those are the main difference. There's probably some difference. I don't know their recipes down there. Ours is a pretty simple bread recipe, so it's probably not too different. But it's really just in the process of how the bread's made.
Yeah, the Miami bread. Again, if you're raised on it, that's all you know. Totally understand why you would prefer it, but it's more of an eggshell kind of
Right,
finish to it. You have to press it to get as crusty as what Tampa bread is naturally.
right.
You could not press a Tampa sandwich and it would still be a very crunchy, kind of soft experience. And I've seen it, I know at Versailles, the sandwich shop
Hmm.
on Cayocho in Miami, they actually press theirs open faced and then they close it up. I'm like, so you have to double press it to get to that texture, you
It's
know?
interesting because my dad would always tell me that, like way back in the day, that nobody pressed their sandwiches,
Right.
and so maybe that's why Tampa bread is crust or crunchy like that, and he never had his sandwiches pressed.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who don't
Um,
prefer it,
yeah,
pressed. I know it was probably back in the '50s that I've read that at the Columbia that, they would put it in an oven, and they might heat them up, but they wouldn't press them, and it really wasn't until the '50s that the sort of the plancha came into
right.
play, and you put a
Yep.
stack of plates on it to get it to that
Right.
thickness, you
Yeah.
know? But there's just nothing like that Tampa bread for being both crunchy and soft. There's a texture contrast there that just makes the sandwich just go through the roof, I think. Why is Tampa bread so good? Because as you're talking about it, like I asked you one time for the recipe, and I think you gave me 3 ingredients. I mean, you guys give the recipe away.
Hmm.
I tried to make it at home. It tasted sort of like in the profile, but it came out oblong, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't stretch it. I didn't put my forearm on it um, but it's so basic, and yet it's consistent and it has a complexity of flavor even though it's so, like 1, 2, 3 step kinda thing.
So the number one reason that the bread is the way it is because of the bakers. We have bakers that have been with us 20, 25 years. You've met a few of
Yeah.
them. You've met some of our bakers. You've met Brian, and
Shout out to Bryant. Yes.
and he's extremely passionate
Yeah.
about the quality of the bread and staying true to the process and the recipe. And those bakers, will they take that they don't we don't mess with the recipe, obviously, and we don't mess with the process. But every day the bread and the dough comes out differently.
Right.
So it's for them to make judgment decisions from, step 1 to step 3 about, okay, do we need to hold it out a little bit longer? Do we need to push it forward a little bit more? Does it need more time to proof? Our bread, as you know, has like a little bit of sour flavor, so it's a very, very slow process. Not as slow as like a sourdough,
Right.
but somewhere in the middle there. And
It's
if
not
you
a quick bread and it's not a sourdough, it's just
no,
got a little middle there.
yeah, it's got a little middle in it. Like if it's right, it's gonna have sour flavor in it. And if you rush it or you try to do something, out of the standard deal, it's not gonna come out tasting right.
Yeah, it's funny, the number one expense at Columbia is not buildings, it's not people, it is Cuban bread, because, first of all, everybody gets a piece if they want it with their meal. Then we also make so many sandwiches. Then we also make, white chocolate bread pudding with it. We
Hmm.
just do, so much with it. But, I read all the reviews and respond to all the reviews, and I can't tell you how many times someone said, "It was a great restaurant. We had a lovely time. Service was wonderful. That bread," And
Yeah,
I'm like, "Thank you, Copeland."
yeah,
I
no,
mean, that paves so much when you're hungry and you're kind of absorbing things at the Columbia and you're looking around and you're just chewing on this bread and it looks like confetti on your chest and the whole table's littered with crust and bread and butter. I mean, that's just a visceral experience. I'm wondering what your first Cuban bread memory is.
Oh, wow. First Cuban bread memory is probably at my grandmother's house, eating, bread, and when we were young, we drank coffee too. She
Oh,
would
yeah, why not?
she would make us coffee, um, but, I mean, I literally, the only thing we had for breakfast there was, toast, bread and butter.
It's the
That's it,
Ybor City
yeah.
breakfast.
Yeah,
You
that I
dip
mean,
it in
that
the
and
coffee
dip it in
and
the coffee, and that literally, she wouldn't make anything else.
right.
So yeah, that's probably looking back, is the first thing I remember about bread.
I have a friend, who lives in Washington, DC, and her last stop before she gets to the airport is your bakery, and she'll load up with a half dozen loaves, and she'll carry them on to the airplane, put them in the overhead. Everybody looks at her like she's a freak. And then she gets back to DC and she slices them up and puts them individually in the freezer so that every day for however long she can stretch it, she can have cafe con leche and your bread.
That's a great idea.
And it's a phenomenal idea. But it speaks to the passion and the emotion that people tie up with your bread. And I'm guessing you see lots of reactions that way about it being a taste of home and it being a taste of Tampa. What some of the reactions that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, we see it a lot, and, like, one of my favorite things is, we give tours to
Yeah,
kids, we give tours to schools, pretty much anyone that reaches out, we will accommodate. And one of the cool things is seeing is being up front, like, especially in Ybor, and someone will pull me aside and say, "Hey, this is my grandchild, or
right.
this is my son or daughter, and, when I was little, we took a tour here, and now I'm bringing them back." And that to me is really cool. It's kinda like, you feel the sense of community. Obviously, they had a good experience, they learned something, they're coming back. Hopefully, their child's having a good experience,
Sure.
and, it's special. It just is.
So I've been blessed to know your parents,
Mhm.
and I've watched as third generation has handed off to fourth generation, and the little tweaks that you've made in terms of, the customer experience, say on 15th,
Mhm.
and then the expansion to Kennedy Boulevard with the cafe, and then obviously the La Segunda on 4th Street in St. Pete.
Mhm.
What have you done to try and preserve the tradition while also expanding for the future?
Yeah, that's a challenge, and I do think a lot of people, and probably the Gonsmark family is, probably very well aware of this,
I didn't even
and
mention the bakery on Florida Avenue. I
Florida
mean,
Avenue.
taking over the Fido Bakery and then moving into there, and it's like, "Oh my gosh, it seems like such a natural fit." That had to have help you with capacity as well?
It did help us with capacity, but there's certain things like when like that one, for example, you go in and they had their own recipe, and they had their own process. So we had to go in and they had their own bakers. They had bakers that had been there 10, 15 years.
Mhm.
And so then and when you try to tell a baker to do something different, you're beating your head against the wall sometimes.
It's really like talking to a dachshund. The dachshund's like, "I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do." No offense to your bakers, but I
Right.
mean, you get so into the rhythm of what you do, the rhythm of the day, "Here's my process," and you get in the middle of that and you're getting in somebody's head, that affects
Well,
things.
they're very prideful,
Right.
and we appreciate that, but we had to kind of blend, taking some of our bakers from Ybor to over there
Right.
and to slowly change, things, so because we want our bread to taste exactly the same, obviously. And it was the same thing with a lot of especially with Kennedy. We took Sheila there. You remember Sheila?
Sheila
She's
Paternoster.
she's now retired,
Right.
but she was
I
with
used to
us.
order the sandwich that's named for her.
She she was with us for 50 years.
Right.
And so when we opened up Kennedy, we brought Sheila and said, "Listen, this is how you pack pastries." Oh, well, it's just packing pastries in a box. No, no, no,
No,
no.
no.
Sheila had a very specific way. She had a way of checking the pastries in the morning. This wasn't baked right. This doesn't look good. Push it back. This needs to go out. And so I would say, to answer your question, is blending kind of the old guard and the
Sure.
new guard, and doing things slow and gradual. We try not to rush, and we try to listen, as much as possible, especially to our employees, but also to our customers. And we still get it. We still get, hey, this is different than it is in Ybor. This is different. And, you can't have everything 100% exactly the
Right,
same. It's just
right,
never going to be like that.
right.
But you try to do your best.
Well, and it was something actually in the history of Colombia when there was a problem with, each chef in each location grew up making, say, arroz con pollo with their family. They would make their family's recipe and instead of making the Colombia's recipe. And they're like, no, it needs to be the same in Ybor as it is in St. Augustine or Sarasota.
Hmm.
That took a while to kind of purge that to get that kind of consistent expectation for the customer met. And people are, like you said, very prideful. I mean,
Hmm.
very similar again is that, 23% of, say, the 900 to 1,000 people who work for Columbia have been there 10 years or more.
Right.
I mean, having something like
That's a lot.
Sheila and that
Hmm.
institutional knowledge was sort of like George Guido working at Columbia for 60 years,
Right.
and
Exactly.
he sets the standard and, oh, that's the guy that hang the chandelier, all that kind of stuff
Yep.
that you put Sheila someplace, then people know, oh, this is legit. This is the North Star. So that's cool that you kind of pull on that. And by the way, I highly recommend if you ever get a chance to take a tour of La Segunda on 15th in Ybor City. I've taken it several times. Last time I took it, Bryant, who we spoke about earlier, showed me parts of the bakery he wasn't supposed to show and got us behind machinery. You can't go there this time. I was lucky enough, but the thing that got me what Bryant was telling me, and I know this from baking bread myself. I got back into it after COVID, after a long hiatus. I still do it at home, sourdough. I forget about weather. And, there used to be a place in Miami, and they made French pastries. I'm like, how do you make crispy French pastries in all the humidity in Miami? And you really have to read the humidity, the weather, the pressure, all of this. You have to literally read the dough and the ovens and what the capacity is. How do you instill that? What's the process for analyzing those on a daily basis? Because you talked about letting them have the reign to kind of judge what process needs to go and what timing and all that.
Yeah, I don't know if I don't want to bore people too much because it's a very, very long conversation about, how do you judge the dough on a day-to-day basis. But, one thing we do is, our master bakers communicate. So, if you're watching one day and it's humid, you need to take some water out and maybe you take yeast out because it's going to move faster. They document that, and so from one shift to the next, they're saying, "Hey, this is what happened on my mixes, and this is how I adjusted." Okay, great. And some master bakers listen, some don't, some have it their own way. But our flour
Mhm.
changes daily. We have a silo; it holds 50,000 pounds of flour, so the longer it sits in there, the warmer it gets, especially this time of year, and the flour gets stronger.
I hadn't even thought about that
So
part.
then the stronger the flour, the more ice you have to put in the mix, and that changes things. And so you don't really know exactly how it's going to come out until the dough comes out, right? Like you don't know until you feel it and touch it and see what's going on, and then you can make the adjustments. And that's going back to the bakers have been there 20 years, 25 years. They touch it and they know, right away. It's okay. Hang on, let's leave this in the Tessa for a while, or turn the steam on, put more steam. Next though, I need to take some yeast out, hold these guys back at the table a little bit longer, push them to the oven a little bit faster, turn this fan on. Some of them will move the bread to like a certain side of the bakery. They all have their own little ways to do it.
Well,
Um,
that's what a master baker does. I mean,
yeah,
they read the room, they read their product, and, um, I know we're talking granular level here, but I'm a bread nerd, and I make sometimes I make great loaves, and other times I'm like, I should never touch another bag of flour again because it's like a desecration. And to see the amount of loaves that you're putting out, which is like 20,000 a day
yeah,
or
get right about that.
yeah,
Hmm.
um, to be that consistent and that good, that is like magic to me. And that's in the hands of the people that know the bread and know the dough and read the dough.
Yeah, I agree. And we try to send the best bread to you
Right,
guys
right.
that as
Thank you, by
far
the
as,
way.
the shape it goes. It's all for the most part going to taste the same
Right.
depending on the process. But, we do, there is imperfect bread. It's handmade. We put the palmetto leaf on, it's hand placed into the oven. Loaves don't come out great, but they do a phenomenal job. It's somewhere around like 97% of the loaves that they make gets to the customer. And being a handmade, we don't have equipment where you can the a machine that says, "Oh, this dough is too wet."
Right.
It's not like that. It's they got to touch it and say, "Oh, it's too wet. I'm gonna let it dry a little bit longer." And so being all that and still getting to 97% to me is a testament to the bakers.
So, you mentioned the new spot on 4th in
Hmm.
St. Pete. Obviously, you've had the established operations in Tampa. Do you see any difference in customer preferences between both sides of the bay? Because I grew up in St. Pete. We never had really had Cuban sandwiches. I didn't really know about that until, much, much later in life when I lived in Tampa. Now there's more and more, obviously, but it's fascinating to me about the 4th Street location because I'm imagining that there's a little bit of difference in terms of what people are ordering or how they prefer things. And
I would say the main, everyone's pretty consistent as far as Cuban sandwich,
right.
guava, cafe con leche, and take a loaf of bread home. That's pretty standard everywhere. There are like a few difference in pastries, I would say, and like one of the main things is scachata. So scachata is like one of our biggest sellers in Ybor, but it just doesn't sell at Kennedy or St. Pete.
Hmm.
But for whatever reason, it's a preference thing, and it might also be, it's one of those things that's very difficult to make.
Can you describe what that is for people who don't know what scachata is?
Scachata,
Because it's a very Tampa flavor.
yeah, it's actually, my understanding is it's from Sicily, and
Hmm.
that's how it was originally. That's where the recipe came from when Ybor had all the Sicilian immigrants back then. Somehow that got mixed into Tampa culture. It's kind of like the devil crab and all these other things. It's
Hmm.
just that's how it was born. And so it's a cold pizza, I guess is the best way to describe it. The way we make it is, I mean, if you ever had medianoche bread, which is like a sweet egg roll, that's how we make the dough, the
Hmm.
crust, and then it's a pizza sauce, and it's
Do you put
served.
any cheese in the pizza sauce at all?
Yeah,
Or
it's got cheese on it. It's got very little bit of meat on
right.
there, but it's served cold. And I think it's one of those things that, if you're not from here and you haven't
Right.
eaten a lot of it, or someone hasn't pushed you to try it,
Right.
you look in the case and it's next to a guava turnover. It's not something you're gonna be like, "Oh, I want that."
Yeah.
So,
It's, like, not even fair at that point, but yeah,
yeah.
I get it.
But if you try it, I mean, we used to take an 80-piece box to the beach every time we went there in the summer,
Sure.
and it gets crushed immediately.
It's one of those things that, grandmas and nonas used to make, before, Christmas or Thanksgiving or birthdays or whatever it was to
Mhm.
fill bellies before, while the dinner was getting ready, as I was understanding it. And then, it kinda got to be known for being a cold item that you could take to tailgates or whatnot in
Yeah.
a box. At Casa Santo Stefano, we've served it hot, and that was even like, you talk about people having, traditional expectations. A hot scachata I had never had before that, and I'm like, "Oh my god, that's so good." A little bit of Caciocavallo cheese on top and everything. And, but I love the fact that I mean, you told me one time that you insisted that scachata be on the menu on 4th Street in St. Pete, even though it doesn't sell, because that's our brand,
Yeah,
that's
we
Tampa.
yeah, we try. We keep trying, and our managers are like, food costs and this and that, and it's, "Oh, no, you just keep trying,"
Yeah.
and, yeah, it's something it's like you said, it's our brand. It's something really important to Ybor City.
Mhm.
I think it's one of those foods, even though it was born in Sicily, I still think it's like an Ybor City food.
Yeah.
I think it's one of our foods.
It's
So
in the DNA,
that's
man,
it. Yeah.
it's so representative of so many different cultures, but I had never heard you talk about it in relationship to, like, medianoche bread, and I'm like, "Oh, okay, well, that explains there's a little bit of a yellow tint to your scachata versus other scachatas I've had,"
Yep.
and I think that little bit of difference is what drives a huge amount of flavor, so, do you have like, if someone's new to Tampa, Do you have a place that you take them or a food that you give them that says, "Okay, this is our food," that you baptize them with?
Yeah, it's our bakery.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, it seemed like a Captain Obvious question, but I thought I
No,
would
I
ask.
no, I, outside of our bakery, I send a lot of people to Colombia. That's probably one of the
Sure.
main things, and just the history there and the ambiance, experience, the people, the service, that's that's a Tampa staple. You can't really go wrong with.
Yeah. I have Columbia dreams now that I've worked there for almost 10 years. Do you have bread dreams?
Yeah. Our yeah, I mean, that's a great question because our literally, when my dad was here more so, and we still do now because my wife is heavily involved in the business and
Sure.
my daughters are obviously super interested. But when my dad was here, no matter where we were, we talked about the bakery, and then we'd work together. We'd come home. Dad, I don't want, let's talk about baseball. So my son, oh, and then he'd be
He
like,
loved
oh,
baseball,
yeah,
man.
he'd be like, oh, well, the oven and this and this, and then it just gets back into it. And so we bake bread 24 hours, and so there's always something going on. So it's one of those businesses that's it's just nonstop.
Right,
But I think that keeps it fun and interesting and, engaging, like, for a job, I guess, to
right.
say. It's like you say it's a job, but for us, it's like a lifestyle
Yeah,
almost.
very much so. You have
Yeah,
to live the brand, you know?
yeah.
It's like gets into your bloodstream. Speaking of your father, one of my favorite stories that I heard at his, memorial service was the word Delta, and that it stood for "Don't ever leave Tampa again." And I just was like, "Dude, I loved him enough then." And just that, that love is you can taste it in the bread. I know it sounds silly, but I always say you can't be a bad person to make good food. Eventually it comes out on the plate or whatever you're making. And that love of Tampa, that love of family, don't ever leave Tampa again, just melted my soul. But I imagine I mean, you grew up in that building. I mean, every time you walk through, you must kind of see your grandfather and your father and, the family work there. That's gotta be, gratifying,
It is, and, a lot of the employees remember both of them, both
right?
my grandfather and my father, and they speak about them,
Right. Oh, Bryant especially.
which is really
Bryant
cool.
could be
Yeah.
like a lost, Moré family member because he loved both of them,
Yeah, I mean, there's Bryant, there's Stevie, there's Louie, they're all brothers.
Right.
We have their cousins, their nephews, working there. Brian and I got in an argument the other day about, packing bread a certain way, and, his he likes to go back and say, "Your grandfather packed it this way."
Oh, he went deep on
Yeah,
you. He
he
went 2 generations in the argument.
yeah, he knows what to say, so, but yeah, it's good, it's great having the tie-in, it's great having people to be able to reference back and bring memories. The bakery was a little different when I was younger, obviously, but, not to the building is pretty much the same,
Right.
like, we instead of the silo, they used to have bag flours way way back when, so I can remember being young and, like, climbing up and trying to get to the top of the stacks of flour and,
Back when they would let you do stuff like that.
yeah, yeah,
They let you out of the house at 8 o'clock. You come back at 6 for dinner,
yeah, yeah,
Climb some flower if you want to.
yeah, exactly, and things are a little bit different
A
now,
little
but,
bit.
no, it's fun, I love being there, like you said, you can walk around and memories come back, one of our best memories is, for Christmas time, Noche Buena,
Yeah.
that's our biggest day of the year. And so when we were little, the whole family would come. And the main thing, you either pack bread or you pack cookie boxes. And that is like a big responsibility when you're young, when you're that age to make the cookie boxes. And so we love doing it with our kids.
Mhm.
And then our kids, we have their friends come now every year their friends are like, oh, when are we going to pack cookie box? So it's just there's a lot of cool traditions there that, we like keeping alive.
That's awesome. And then the most important question,
Mhm.
is it Tampa devil crab or deviled crab
Oh, it's devil crab.
without the ED?
No, yeah,
Okay,
that's what I always say,
okay,
yeah.
alright. 'Cause, we've had this conversation with everybody who's been on the show this season, and it's a vital question to me, and every time I ask it, someone will give an answer like, "Why is that wrong?" And I'm like,
Yeah, it's a
it depends on who you are and what you think. I think it's devil just without the ED because it's cool and it's very old school Tampa, Ybor City.
yeah, I think of a deviled crab, like or
Like deviled
deviled egg.
ham or
Yeah,
deviled
yeah,
egg.
yeah, like, that's how I think it. So I've
Yeah.
always thought of it as a devil crab, but, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong.
And you
I've
eat them
never
though,
really thought
right?
about that.
You eat a devil crab, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, all day long. A little
Yeah,
bit of hot sauce
yeah,
all day long.
yeah.
I can't thank you enough for sitting down and talk with us.
That's it? We're
Appreciate you
done
being here. We're
already?
done. I
That
gotta go
was
get some
quick.
devil crab and some
Yeah,
guava cheese,
that was
man.
quick, man.
And thank you for watching Tampa's Table, A Culinary Journey. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you like and subscribe podcasts, and leave a comment in the bottom comment area about whether it's devil or deviled. We really want to know what you think about this. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, we'll save a seat at the table for you.